Careful, human, Chancellor Varel's voice sliced through the crystal chamber. You missed a drop beneath the Queen's dais. Try not to stain the light itself with your primitive mop. Laughter rippled across the Celestial Academy's Hall of Ascension, a hall so vast the air itself shimmered from harmonic resonance. The nobles gleamed in mirrored armor, their translucent skin refracting the golden luminescence of the star core suspended above. At the bottom of the stairs, Elias Voss knelt, his patched uniform dull against the floor that reflected galaxies. Apologies, Chancellor, he said quietly, wringing the mop. The liquid glowed faintly, star coolant, volatile if spilled. His hands moved with careful rhythm, each stroke measured, too precise for a janitor, but no one noticed. You scrub as if the universe depends on it, one of the young Aurelian heirs sneered. Do all humans believe shining our floors will earn them a seat among us? Elias glanced up. No, he said softly. Only that clean light reveals what's been decaying underneath. The chamber fell momentarily silent. Stop scroll reversal. The Chancellor's smile faltered, uncertain whether it had been an insult or philosophy. Elias dipped the mop again, a single droplet tracing a glowing circle, an ancient navigator's calibration sign, before he wiped it away. You'll want to see how the moment they mocked him, the narration would whisper if this were broadcast, turned into a galaxy-wide reckoning. Elias resumed his work as the nobles drifted away, their laughter echoing like static through the high arches. He moved methodically, not as a servant, but as someone maintaining equilibrium. The hall's light refracted over his worn boots, bending ever so slightly, like reality itself adjusting to his calm. Father? A small voice called. Lyra emerged from behind a column, clutching her datapad. Her eyes were pale gold, unlike his. The hybrid blood that made her unwelcome here gave her vision sensitive enough to see the harmonic lines trembling behind the walls. I told you to stay near the hydro balcony, he murmured, drying his hands. Too many eyes here. I heard them laughing, she whispered. About you. About us. He crouched beside her, fingers brushing her hair, black with faint silver strands that glowed faintly in the starlight. Then remember what I told you. When people laugh from above, they can't see what keeps them standing. Her small chin lifted. The floor. And the one who keeps it steady, he said. Don't forget that. They sat in silence for a moment. From above, the Queen's ceremonial choir practiced for the Centennial Luminary Festival, a celebration powered by the star core beneath the city. The air hummed with distant resonance, a frequency meant only for Aurelian ears. But Elias heard it, not as music, more like a heartbeat gone wrong. Varel's voice returned, closer this time. You allow your offspring in restricted corridors again, janitor? Do you think half-breeds deserve to bask in royal harmonics? Lyra flinched. Elias rose slowly, placing her behind him. She's here to learn humility, he said evenly. The Chancellor's gaze was razor bright. Then she'll have an excellent teacher. Elias said nothing. His silence wasn't submission. It was containment. The same composure that once steadied collapsing gravitational fields now steadied a trembling child. Dismissed before I revoke your labor license, Varel snapped, turning on his heel, the hum of his energy cloak following like thunder. When they were alone again, Elias exhaled slowly. The faint tremor in the floor deepened, unseen by the nobles above. He placed his palm on the marble, felt the harmonic pulse of the star core lattice, and frowned. Something was wrong. Lyra tugged his sleeve. Is it sick? He looked at her. The core? She nodded, eyes wide. Yes, he said quietly, and the ones who feed it are too proud to notice. They walked toward the lower tiers where servants stored maintenance gear. The corridors were dimmer here, walls breathing with the rhythm of contained energy. As they passed an open viewport, Lyra paused to stare at the Academy's orbital spire, stretching upward until it vanished into the blue-white haze of the star core's glow. Do you miss it? She asked. Miss what? The black between the stars. He almost smiled. Every day. She pressed her small hand to the glass. You said humans once sailed that black. We did, he answered, until we mistook silence for peace. From the far corridor, A muffled vibration rattled the floor, barely perceptible to untrained ears, but to him it was unmistakable. Triple node instability, the early whisper of phase misalignment, the same kind that could unravel a lattice or ignite an atmosphere if left unchecked. He looked down at his mop, its metal shaft wrapped in cloth. Beneath the fabric, the Titan alloy shimmered faintly. His old hands tightened around it. For a moment, the hum of the star core synchronized with his heartbeat, then slipped away again, unbalanced. He could fix it now. He knew exactly where to tune, which nodes to dampen. But revealing such knowledge would expose him, and Lyra's safety depended on invisibility. Elias turned the mop upright, letting its reflection merge with the glowing walls, and said softly, "Not yet." Lyra looked up. "What did you say?" "Just thinking out loud," he replied. "Some things are better mended when no one's watching." The festival drums echoed above, thousands gathering for rehearsal. The queen herself would soon descend to test the ceremonial harmonics. Elias returned to his duties, but his gaze lingered on the flickering conduits. He could already see where the frequencies would buckle during the overdraw. As he dipped the mop once more, Lyra's reflection appeared beside his. Two figures, small against endless light. He smiled faintly. "One day, these halls will remember us not for cleaning them, but for keeping them from falling apart." Lyra tilted her head. "Will they thank you then?" He shook his head. "No, but maybe they'll stop laughing." The tremor beneath their feet deepened, a long, slow vibration spreading through the marble. It sounded like a creature breathing uneasily beneath its own skin. Elias straightened, scanning the walls. The nobles would call it ceremonial resonance drift, but to him it was the unmistakable warning of a core on the verge of imbalance. He placed the mop against the wall, his hand lingering on the worn fabric where hidden etchings gleamed beneath. "Where are you watching from?" the narrator would whisper to the audience as the camera pulled back through the towering spires of the academy. Because they thought he was only a janitor, they were about to learn how wrong they were. The day of the Centennial Luminary Festival dawned with blinding radiance. Above the Celestial Academy, the star core pulsed like a living sun, suspended inside the heart of the Dominion's capital. Every balcony, every spire, every reflective surface was tuned to amplify its glow. Millions watched from across the empire through quantum relays, waiting to witness the Aurelians prove once again that their mastery over light was divine. The streets shimmered with holographic banners, and the air hummed with harmonic chants, a sound engineered to remind lesser species of their place in the galactic order. Elias Voss adjusted the straps of his maintenance harness as he walked the inner corridor beneath the observation tiers. His daughter Lyra trailed behind him, holding the edge of his sleeve, her eyes darting toward the mirrored walls that pulsed faintly with the core's rhythm. Even here, buried under kilometers of crystal architecture, he could feel the vibration crawling through his bones. It was off-pitch, half a cycle behind the expected frequency. Only someone trained to steer a Titan-class singularity could feel that discrepancy. He slowed, pretending to check his work pad. "Don't fall behind," he murmured. "I won't," Lyra whispered, but her gaze was fixed upward where light bled through the transparent ceiling. "It's so bright today." "Too bright," he muttered. The maintenance bay opened into a vast concourse leading to the observation deck. Nobles flowed in like a tide of golden glass, escorted by attendants in translucent robes. They spoke in melodic Aurelian, a language that sounded beautiful until you understood its cruelty. Every compliment a hierarchy, every greeting a measurement of worth. Humans like Elias were never greeted, only tolerated. At the far end of the chamber, Chancellor Varel stood atop a raised dais, overseeing preparations. The Chancellor wore a cloak of living plasma, his eyes, reflecting 1,000 spectral hues. "Stabilize the outer harmonics," he commanded the engineers. "I want perfect symmetry before the Queen arrives." The technicians, all Aurelian, nodded frantically, their slender fingers dancing across floating control runes. Elias could tell from a glance that they were compensating incorrectly. Their algorithm favored efficiency over precision, too modern, too dependent on automation. The same arrogance that doomed empires before them. He hesitated near the lattice conduits, watching the figures scroll across the diagnostic display. The energy buildup was accelerating faster than the projections allowed. The readings were redlining. He felt the hair on his arms lift. "Sir," he said carefully, addressing one of the lesser overseers nearby, "you're pushing the charge too quickly. The harmonics are phase shifting. You'll get triple node interference if you don't." The overseer turned, disgust flashing across his crystalline face. "Did a cleaner just speak of lattice theory?" Elias straightened. "The readings are clear. You're compressing resonance layers that were never designed for—" "Silence!" the alien snapped, voice echoing across the deck. Heads turned. Varel's gaze locked onto him like a blade of sunlight. "The human believes he understands the star core?" The crowd chuckled. Elias said nothing, but his hand unconsciously brushed the mop handle strapped to his back. Lyra clung to his side, eyes wide with fear. "Perhaps," Varel continued, voice carrying, "we should let him demonstrate. Go on, janitor. Fix the heart of the Dominion. Clean it, if you must." The laughter hit him like shrapnel. He didn't flinch. "I wasn't offering to fix it," Elias said quietly. "I was warning you." The words hung in the air like a fault line. For a moment, even the harmonics seemed to dim. Then Varel turned away, waving dismissively. "Remove this relic from my sight. I will not have superstition interrupting precision." Guards approached, but Elias raised his work pad, tapping a line of data, the oscillation graph flickering erratically. "It's already begun," he murmured. "You won't see it until it's too late." The guards hesitated, glancing at the readings. For an instant, the deck seemed to tremble underfoot, a subtle vibration rolling like distant thunder. Varel sneered. "Micro fluctuations. Harmless. We are the keepers of light, not primitives fearing shadows." He turned back to his console. The guards lowered their staves but didn't move closer. Elias put an arm around Lyra's shoulders and guided her toward the exit. She looked back, confused. "Why won't they listen?" He smiled faintly, though it didn't reach his eyes. "Because listening would make them responsible." Outside, the concourse teemed with celebration. Holographic suns drifted through the air, shedding petals of luminescent dust. Music pulsed through the crystal walls. Elias and Lyra stood among other laborers lining the walkway, invisible yet necessary. Above them, through the transparent dome, the Queen's procession approached. Queen Isilra, regal, unearthly, her skin woven with living light. The crowd bowed in synchrony. Elias lowered his head, though not in reverence. The Queen raised her arms and the harmonics deepened into a single resonant tone that vibrated through the marrow of every being present. "On this day," she declared, "light renews itself through us. We draw upon the heart of the stars to prove the dominion of harmony." Applause thundered. The engineers activated the ceremonial sequence. Energy veins lit across the city, converging into the star core chamber below. Elias felt the ground tilt in rhythm with the pulse. His heartbeat quickened. Lyra wobbled beside him, clutching her chest. "It's too loud," she gasped. "Too heavy." He caught her before she fell. Her skin had turned pale, veins flickering with unstable biolight. The resonance was tearing through her hybrid physiology. "Hold on," he whispered, guiding her to a shaded alcove. Her breathing was shallow, her eyes unfocused. Above them, the crowd cheered as the light brightened to blinding white. Then, faint but distinct, Elias heard it. A harmonic drop. A second later, another. The star core's frequency stuttered like a dying heartbeat. The dome vibrated. Cracks formed in the projection lattice. Alarms triggered somewhere deep beneath the surface. The music halted mid-chord. Silence. Then a surge of light exploded across the sky. The crowd screamed as gravitational ripples tossed them off balance. Power conduits burst, scattering shards of glowing glass. The Queen's procession froze in disbelief. "Stabilizers!" Varel shouted, scrambling to his console. "Lock the phase alignment now!" "It's not responding!" cried an engineer. "The lattice governor's offline!" The sound that followed was like the universe inhaling. The entire palace shuddered as the star core slipped into triple node phase skew. 3 harmonic nodes cycling out of sync, feeding on each other's instability. Elias felt it as pain in his chest, like an old wound reopening. Lyra's cry pulled him back. She was seizing, light flickering beneath her skin. He pressed her against him, shielding her from falling debris. "Father," she whispered weakly, "the light, it's breaking." He looked toward the corridor leading down to the maintenance alignment bay, the only section still physically connected to the resonance lattice. He had built those access paths decades ago, when the Titan navigator still mattered. He knew every coil, every harmonic strut, every bypass route. He knew exactly how to fix it. "Stay here," he told her, setting her gently against the wall. "I'll be back before the next pulse." "You can't," she breathed. "They'll see you." He smiled, a thin, tired curve of defiance. "Let them." As the nobles panicked and guards ran for shelter, the human janitor moved against the flow, descending into the trembling corridors with his mop in hand. The lights flickered red, then white, then died entirely. The floor glowed faintly with residual energy, each step timed to the fading heartbeat of the core. In the chaos above, the Chancellor shouted orders that no one obeyed. The Queen's guards shielded her from collapsing shards. And somewhere, deep beneath them all, a single human descended through the dust and flickering light, whispering to himself like a man returning to an old ship. "Steady now," Elias murmured, "one node at a time." The mop glinted in his grip, and for the first time in a century, the galaxy's forgotten navigator walked back into the heart of the stars. The alarms screamed like wounded creatures. Red light washed over the corridors as the Celestial Academy convulsed under the strain of its own arrogance. Above, the nobles scattered in panic. Below, the infrastructure groaned as containment fields flickered and failed. The air grew heavy with ionized dust. Elias Voss descended into the maintenance shafts, gripping his mop like a lifeline. The further he went, the louder the sound of the star core's dissonant hum became, a pulsing roar that rattled his bones. The scent of scorched metal filled his lungs. The Dominion's greatest marvel was collapsing, and its creators didn't even understand why. The maintenance corridor ended in a circular hatch marked with the sigil of the Resonance Council. Entry restricted to high-ranking engineers. The door's sensor pulsed weakly, asking for clearance codes. Elias placed his hand on the panel. The scanner flickered, confused by human skin. He smiled grimly. "Still not built for us," he muttered. He reached into his pocket and withdrew a thin strip of analog filament, an obsolete bypass key from a bygone era. He slid it into the hatch seam and twisted. The panel's harmonic field destabilized with a quiet pop. The door hissed open. The star core alignment bay stretched before him, a cathedral of light and machinery. The central chamber pulsed with energy, a lattice of mirrored conduits swirling around the suspended core, a miniature sun bleeding chaos into the walls. It was beautiful and horrifying, alive and dying all at once. The Aurelian's automated systems were still trying to recalibrate, firing adjustment pulses in wild, conflicting rhythms. The feedback from their own commands tore the harmonic nodes apart. Elias moved fast, climbing over a railing as plasma vents opened below. He reached the manual control station, an artifact older than the current dynasty. Its interface was covered in dust and disuse, a relic no one believed worth maintaining. He brushed it off with his sleeve. The sound of footsteps echoed behind him. He turned sharply. A young Aurelian engineer, his face streaked with panic, stumbled into the room. "Who authorized you down here?" he shouted. "You can't be—" The engineer froze as another tremor hit. The walls shuddered, and a burst of energy ripped through the lower conduits. Elias ducked, shielding the boy from a shower of sparks. "If you value your life," Elias said evenly, "get back to the upper decks. Tell them the janitor is cleaning up their mess." The engineer blinked, stunned, then ran. Elias turned back to the console. He tore the cleaning cloth from his mop, revealing the gleaming metal beneath. A dull silver rod etched with microfiligree patterns that shimmered faintly in the red emergency light. The Titan balance rod, forged in the same alloy used to tune singularity drives. His fingers trembled as he touched it, not from fear but memory. He hadn't held one in decades. When humanity's fleet fell, he'd sworn never to touch a navigator's tool again. But now his daughter lay somewhere above, her fragile body reacting to the core's instability. He set his jaw and stepped closer to the trembling lattice. Manual alignment protocol, he whispered to himself. The rod pulsed in his hand, resonating with the core's frequencies. He began the old ritual, 3 calibration strokes across the central conduit, each precise to a fraction of a second. The sound was haunting, metallic against crystal, like a musician coaxing harmony from a dying instrument. The core's pulse faltered, then steadied slightly. The tremors slowed. He adjusted the rod's angle, tracing invisible equations in the air, each motion restoring symmetry the Aurelian's computers could not perceive. On a galactic broadcast feed still running in fragmented loops, the camera drones caught a fleeting glimpse. A lone human standing before the blazing core, his body silhouetted by firelight, wielding what appeared to be a janitor's tool like a conductor's baton. Billions watched without understanding. They saw not a worker, but a man sculpting order out of entropy. Above, Chancellor Varel shouted into comms, demanding updates. Why hasn't the lattice stabilized? What's happening in the alignment bay? Static answered. No one dared tell him that a human had taken control. Elias's movements quickened. The analog rhythm filled the chamber. Each tap, each sweep of the rod, carried intent. The harmonic frequencies responded, color shifting from violent red to trembling gold. Sweat ran down his temples, his breath syncing with the rhythm. He whispered old navigator code phrases under his breath, half technical, half prayer. Node 1 aligned, Node 2 oscillation 0.3, hold phase. A low groan reverberated through the floor. He spun the rod in a figure 8, forcing the third node back into sync. The feedback surge hit him like a tidal wave. He staggered, gripping the railing as the rod glowed white-hot in his hand. The pain was electric, but he didn't let go. He remembered the training on Soul's Resolve, the endless hours inside quantum slipstreams, learning to hear the voice of the void. This was no different. Stay with me, he muttered to the core, as though to a wounded creature. Breathe. The lattice obeyed. The light softened to steady blue. For the first time since the crisis began, the tremors ceased. On the upper decks, silence fell over the panicking nobles. Engineers stared at their displays as readings normalized one by one. It's stabilizing, one whispered. But that's impossible. The AI isn't doing it. Then who is? Another asked. Down below, Elias lowered the rod, panting. The core hummed evenly now, resonating with perfect balance. He rested his forehead against the railing, eyes closed. For a brief moment, he thought it was over. Then a deeper sound echoed through the chamber, low, resonant, ancient. The core responded to his calibration by releasing a kinetic signal, a coded pulse embedded in its architecture since before the Dominion existed. A pattern only human navigators could produce. The pulse expanded outward, rippling through the city's power grid, climbing into orbit. In the skies above, every satellite and relay began broadcasting the same encrypted signal. A navigational kin code, dormant for centuries. High above the planet, hidden beyond the second moon, something vast stirred. Cloak systems flickered online, ancient reactors awakening after an age of silence. Dust drifted off an armored hull the size of a continent. The Titan-class warship Soul's Resolve, lost since humanity's fall, blinked into existence, its colossal frame emerging from stealth. The ship's AI registered the signal and searched for an authentication key. The answer came from the alignment bay. Elias Voss's pulse signature, encoded in the balance rod's harmonic imprint. Navigator Voss, said a voice across all frequencies, calm and resonant, speaking in a language no one alive had heard in 1,000 years. Authentication confirmed. The Dominion froze. In the upper city, the Queen's procession halted mid-evacuation. The massive holographic sky filled with the image of a shadow crossing the twin moons. A black leviathan, radiant edges tracing its shape. The crowd looked up, speechless. What is that? Someone whispered. The warship turned slowly, its thrusters glowing like small suns. Every communication network crackled alive. Humanity Titan-class warship Soul's Resolve, the AI intoned, audible even through planetary shields. Awaiting navigator command. Elias raised his head, light from the core reflecting in his eyes. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. The galaxy heard him in the silence that followed. a silence so complete it swallowed the roar of panic and turned it into awe. Across the Dominion, entire worlds paused their celebrations to stare at the sudden shadow above. The nobles who mocked him earlier now stood frozen beneath the throne's broken light, unable to comprehend how a janitor's heartbeat had called down a myth. And then in the stillness that followed, every being who saw it felt the same thought forming in their minds. The galaxy was holding its breath. The world above the core erupted in disbelief. The nobles who had mocked Elias hours earlier stood frozen on the trembling observation decks as their own reflections warped across the dome of glass and light. The sky, once a pure field of gold, had turned black. Out of the void beyond the twin moons, the colossal silhouette of a ship emerged, its hull wider than continents, its surface scarred by age and battle. It moved with impossible grace for its size, gliding through orbit like a predator, returning to familiar hunting grounds. The Aurelians had no name for it. The human survivors did. Soul's Resolve, the last Titan-class warship. Its shadow swept over the planet, dimming entire cities. Every communication frequency across the Dominion lit up with emergency broadcasts. Engineers and admirals spoke over each other, their voices blending into chaos. No one had ever seen a vessel of that scale. Its engines alone could power 1,000 Aurelian worlds. The Queen's Guard surrounded her throne platform, scanning the heavens for any sign of hostility. But there was none. The warship remained silent, its weapons offline, its stance calm but watchful. From the heart of the planet, a voice echoed across the networks. "Navigator Voss," the Titan's AI repeated, voice deep as tectonic rumble. "Authentication confirmed. Awaiting command." The statement reached every channel, every speaker, every screen. The galaxy listened. Billions of beings, spread across hundreds of systems, paused in unison. In the great academies of the Aurelians, students fell silent mid-lecture. On mining moons, laborers dropped their tools. Even the fleets patrolling the outer rim ceased transmission. The galaxy had waited 10,000 years to hear the voice of a Titan-class warship, and when it came, it spoke the name of a janitor. Elias stood in the alignment bay, shoulders hunched, breath shallow. The air shimmered with residual energy from the core. The calibration rod, glowing faintly in his hand, hummed in harmony with the distant echo of the warship's voice. He could feel it resonating through him, a connection reawakening after decades of silence. He had thought the ship lost forever when humanity fell, scattered across the spiral arm, but its AI had never died. It had simply waited, dormant, buried beneath cosmic noise, until a navigator's pulse reached it once again. He touched the comm console on the wall, its surface flickering weakly. "Soul's Resolve," he said quietly, his voice steady despite the weight of the moment. "Hold position. Do not engage." "Command acknowledge," replied the AI. Its tone was neither mechanical nor alive, somewhere in between, like a god remembering language. "Planetary readings show unstable, harmonic containment. Shall I assist?" Elias glanced around the alignment bay. The lattice hummed softly now, stable but fragile. The Aurelian systems were slowly coming back online. "Negative," he said. "Maintain non-aggression posture. Broadcast peace beacon in all known Dominion codes." Outside, the warship obeyed. Its hull lights shifted from blue to gold, pulsing in rhythmic intervals of 5, the ancient human signal for ceasefire. The Aurelians' defense satellites, still calibrating their aim, paused mid-lock. The Queen's advisors leaned toward her throne, whispering furiously. "It's responding to him," one said in disbelief. "The human is controlling it." Queen Isildur's gaze was fixed on the horizon. Through the panoramic window of her throne hall, she could see the reflection of the warship's shadow on the ocean that surrounded the capital spire. Her expression was unreadable, half awe, half fear. "Bring him to me," she said softly. Down below, the Chancellor's fury boiled. Varel stormed into the alignment bay, his cloak crackling with discharged energy. "Step away from that console," he barked, pointing an accusing finger. "You've sabotaged the core, you've awakened forbidden relics, and you've jeopardized the entire Dominion." Elias didn't turn. "If I hadn't interfered," he said calmly, "you'd be vaporized dust orbiting the core's remains." "Lies," Varel spat. "Your kind can't even comprehend this technology." He gestured toward the now stabilized core, light pulsing in calm rhythm. This is Aurelian creation, perfected through 10 millennia of replication, Elias interrupted quietly. Not creation. The star core lattice is human in origin. You renamed it, but you never understood its breadth. The Chancellor froze, disbelief widening his eyes. Impossible. Elias turned then, his expression neither proud nor mocking. I helped design its early prototypes, Chancellor, before your empire learned to polish their first harmonic crystal. He raised the rod slightly, the markings gleaming in the light. This isn't a mop handle, it's a Titan tuning rod. Same alloy that stabilized singularity drives on Soul's resolve. You've been using human equations to hold your suns together, and you never even knew. Above them, thunder rolled as the warship shifted position in orbit. Its gravity signature registered across Dominion sensors, tripping alarms that hadn't been triggered in centuries. Holographic projections lit up across the chamber, showing the ship hovering peacefully, its weapons bays sealed. The message was clear. The Titan could destroy the Dominion in seconds, but it didn't. The Queen's guards arrived first, flanked by council envoys. By order of the throne, one announced, the human known as Elias Voss is summoned to appear before Her Majesty. Varel stepped forward, rage and panic warring in his eye. He's a criminal. He's tampered with the core, endangered us all. The guard's gaze didn't waver. The Queen said summon, not arrest. Elias looked at Lyra's image on the small wrist display, a medical feed from the upper tiers showing her stable but weak. He closed his eyes briefly, relief softening his features. Then he nodded. Tell the Queen I'll come, he said. As they escorted him upward through the trembling lifts, the city unfolded in all its fractured beauty. The once perfect glass towers bore hairline cracks, glowing with residual light. The golden bridges had warped under the gravitational ripples. Above them, the warship loomed, a silent titan reflecting the rising sun. People flooded the streets, pointing upward, some weeping, some praying. For the first time in living memory, the Aurelians felt small. The lift opened into the throne hall, vast enough to house entire starships. Queen Azilra stood at the edge of her dais, her luminous gown trailing like liquid dawn. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of aeons. You are Elias Voss, maintenance laborer of the Celestial Academy, she said, and yet the machine in our sky calls you navigator. Elias bowed his head. Both are true, Majesty. Explain this miracle. He met her gaze. No miracle, just memory. You've been standing on the ruins of human work for centuries, convinced you built it yourselves. You inherited the blueprints of Titans but forgot the hands that forged them. The hall fell silent. The Queen studied him, the golden light of the core reflected in her eyes. And what would you have us believe? That humanity returns as savior? Elias shook his head slowly. As a reminder, the doors burst open behind him. Varel strode in, flanked by guards who hesitated at the Queen's glare. He's dangerous, the Chancellor shouted. That ship obeys him. What happens when he decides to turn it on us? Elias's voice was steady. If I wanted vengeance, I'd have let the core collapse. The Queen raised her hand. Enough. The warship has not fired. The core is stable. This man's actions preserved our lives. She turned toward Elias, her tone softening. Navigator Voss, what do you intend now? He hesitated, glancing through the grand windows at the hovering Titan. I intend nothing. The warship will remain idle until it's needed again. Humanity built it to protect, not conquer. I only wish to see my daughter safe. Queen Azilra nodded slowly. You will have that. She stepped forward, her gaze shifting to the shadow of Soul's resolve above. But the galaxy will not forget this day. A man they called Janitor spoke to a sun, stilled its death, and summoned a myth. Elias exhaled, weary, eyes half closing. Then maybe it will remember humility too. The Queen's reply was almost a whisper. The galaxy is learning. Outside, the Titan warship rotated slowly, its engines forming a halo of white fire. Every city across the Dominion saw it, an ancient emblem of a species they had dismissed. For the first time in recorded history, the Aurelians realized that beneath the vastness of their light, A deeper legacy had endured. The janitor who saved their world had not come to reclaim it. He had simply cleaned the mess they made of it. The Celestial Academy was no longer a place of music and light. Its great halls, once echoing with songs of divine harmony, had become a battlefield of whispers and accusations. The shadow of Sol's resolve still hung over the planet like a judgment written across the sky. Every noble in the Dominion feared to speak its name aloud, as if doing so might summon another revelation that could shatter their illusions further. In the hours following the stabilization of the Star Core, a message from the Queen spread through every system. There would be a public tribunal, broadcast across the stars. The Dominion would witness the truth of what had occurred. The Hall of Confluence was prepared for the event, a place of ceremony and law that floated above the glowing core of the capital like a suspended cathedral. Its floor was made of living glass, through which the audience could see the stabilized star core pulsing gently below, a reminder of what had nearly been lost. Thousands of Aurelians filled the stands, their luminous forms dim with unease. The hum of the core below synchronized with their heartbeats, slow and heavy. At the center of the hall stood a circular platform of white stone, bathed in light from above. Elias Voss stood there in his worn uniform, the same one he had used to mop floors hours earlier. His hands were clasped behind his back. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. On the opposite side stood Chancellor Varel, draped in the crimson sigils of the Dominion Council. His face gleamed with polished perfection, but the fury in his voice cracked the air. This tribunal is an insult to every Aurelian who has dedicated their life to the preservation of light, he thundered. We gather here not to celebrate this human's delusions, but to expose the chaos he unleashed. He tampered with sacred systems, endangered billions, and, through some trick of corrupted machinery, reawakened a warship capable of annihilation. His words rippled through the audience like poison. Do you not see? The humans have always been dangerous. Even now they seek to manipulate our faith, our science, our very survival. Queen Isilra sat upon her elevated throne, silent, her expression unreadable. Around her, the council of radiant scholars whispered among themselves, torn between fear and curiosity. The tribunal drones hovered above, their lenses projecting the event across the empire. Billions watched from distant systems. For many, this was their first time seeing a human at all. Varel gestured toward the projection feed behind him. Observe, he commanded. The hologram flickered to life, showing the star core collapse in chilling detail. The trembling lattice, the explosion of energy, the alarms. The feeds zoomed in on Elias, alone in the alignment bay, his mop transformed into a glowing rod as he performed the calibration. The crowd gasped, half in awe, half in disbelief. You see him interfere, Varel said. You see him strike the conduits with reckless abandon, tampering with our sacred design. He turned sharply, eyes burning with venom. Tell me, human, who gave you the right? Elias lifted his head slowly. His voice was calm even, every word landing like a measured breath. No one did. I took the responsibility because no one else could. Laughter rippled among the nobles, but it was strained now, uncertain. Varel's nostrils flared. You claim divinity in your ignorance. You call yourself savior, yet you cannot even comprehend the harm you've done. The harm I prevented, Elias corrected, still calm. The hologram changed again. It displayed the readings of the core's energy levels moments before the collapse, numbers rising exponentially. The scientists in the chamber leaned forward, eyes narrowing. These are your own system's readings, Elias said, his tone factual, not defensive. Triple node phase skew. It's not human superstition. It's physics. You were seconds away from harmonic implosion. A murmur spread through the crowd. Even the Queen's advisors exchanged uneasy glances. Varel's confidence faltered for the first time. Those readings could be falsified. They were recorded by your own lattice, interrupted one of the radiant scholars. The projection zoomed in again, showing telemetry logs. Elias's analog strokes aligned perfectly with the corrective resonance that stabilized the nodes. The holographic data rendered in real time. As he moved the rod, the instability readings fell. The hall filled with the rhythm of the pulses he'd created, Steady, precise, human. The crowd quieted completely. There was only the hum of the star core below, echoing his movements like a heartbeat remembering its pattern. Varel's fury broke through his composure. Even if your interference delayed disaster, it was luck, not mastery. You claimed to be a navigator, but your species was erased for its own recklessness. That ship, he pointed toward the ceiling, where the faint shadow of Soul's resolve was visible through the transparent dome, is a weapon. How long before you use it against us? Elias raised his gaze to meet his accusers. If I wanted vengeance, Chancellor, you wouldn't be here to question me. Gasps rippled through the audience. The Queen leaned forward slightly, studying him. Then what do you seek? Elias hesitated, then looked toward the feed showing the upper medical tiers. There in a quiet ward, Lyra lay under gentle light, awake but pale. She watched the broadcast, small hands pressed against the screen. Only her safety, he said finally. And the truth. The Queen's voice softened. And what truth is that? That you've built your empire on the bones of a forgotten one, Elias said. His voice carried through the hall, low and resonant. That your star core lattice was not born of divine intellect, but stolen from the ruins of human invention. You called us primitive, yet you power your civilization with our ghosts. You praise light, but you don't understand where it came from. You call it perfection, but perfection is what nearly destroyed you. The silence that followed was electric. The nobles stared down at the floor. The scholars exchanged fearful glances. Even Varel's tongue seemed frozen. The Queen closed her eyes briefly, then gestured to the drones. Play the next segment. The hologram changed one final time. This time it showed the moment the warship had decloaked. The entire chamber filled with its shadow. The ship's voice echoed. Navigator Voss. Authentication confirmed. Awaiting command. The audience gasped again, but this time the sound was different. Reverence, not fear. The warship's thrusters glowed gold, mirroring the Dominion's own sacred color. Then came the broadcast from Soul's resolve, translated in real time. Peace beacon active. No aggression detected. The Queen rose from her throne, the glow of the core reflecting across her gown. It did not come to destroy, she said softly. It came to obey. She looked at Elias. It came because you called. Varel staggered forward, voice breaking. You cannot trust him. He's a relic of chaos. The Titan ship is a weapon of extinction. The Queen's gaze hardened. And yet it did not fire. For the first time, the Chancellor faltered completely. His mouth opened, but no words came. The Queen turned to the gathered crowd. Let it be known, she said, her voice carrying across the chamber, that the human Elias Voss prevented our annihilation. His act of courage and mastery restored the heart of the Dominion. He will not be punished. He will be honored. The hall erupted in murmurs. Some Aurelians bowed their heads. Others wept silently, unable to reconcile their prejudice with what they had witnessed. The Queen stepped down from her dais and approached Elias directly. When she stopped before him, the light from the core cast both of their shadows across the floor. One radiant, one ordinary, merged together in perfect symmetry. Navigator Voss, she said, voice steady but warm. You have returned light to those who had forgotten its cost. The Dominion owes you its life. Elias bowed his head slightly. Keep the core stable, Majesty. That will be enough. Behind them, through the glass dome, the warship drifted slowly into sunlight, its hull glinting like a promise. The people of the Dominion stared upward, their fear transforming into awe. And though the tribunal had ended, the silence that followed carried a single truth through every city, every star, and every mind. The janitor they despised had saved them all. The day after the tribunal, the capital of the Aurelian Dominion felt strangely hushed, as though the planet itself were catching its breath. The streets that once shimmered with vanity and song now echoed with quiet footsteps. No one laughed at the sight of humans anymore. No one dared. The shadow of Soul's resolve still moved gently across the morning clouds, its vast silhouette tracing a slow orbit over the planet. Watching, silent. The warship's reflection danced upon the towers and oceans below, like an omen and a promise. And wherever it passed, the people paused to look up. In the heart of the Celestial Academy, the Queen's banners hung side by side with the sigil of the Titan navigators, a gesture no one could remember seeing in their lifetime. The decree had been signed at dawn. Humans and hybrids would no longer be classified as menial laborers, but as independent citizens under the protection of the throne. Every network across the Dominion broadcast the announcement. Some alien nobles accepted it in silence. Others turned away ashamed. For centuries they had built their empire upon arrogance, and now they were forced to kneel before humility. Elias Voss stood once again in the Star Core Alignment Bay, the place where everything had changed. The chamber had been cleaned, repaired, and restored to brilliance, but he could still smell the faint trace of scorched metal in the air. The harmonic lattice pulsed gently in gold and silver, stable and calm. The mop handle, the Titan balance rod, lay across his hands. He studied it for a long moment before setting it upright beside the alignment rail. It no longer looked like a tool or a relic. It was something in between, an artifact of labor and legacy. He pressed it into the mount above the rail, where the light from the core could shine through it. The alloy caught the glow, scattering it into 1,000 points of light across the walls. The janitor's mop had become a monument. He stood in silence, watching the reflection shimmer until the door behind him opened. Light flooded the corridor, and a small figure stepped inside. Lyra moved slowly, wrapped in a loose white medical robe, her silver-tinted hair falling around her face. Her breathing was still shallow, but her eyes, those soft golden eyes, were alive again. "You shouldn't be here yet," Elias said, though he was smiling before he finished speaking. "I wanted to see it," she said. Her gaze drifted to the mounted rod, to the glow rippling across the walls. "You told me once that the ones who keep things steady never get remembered. But now—" She trailed off, watching how the light painted his silhouette across the floor. "They'll never forget you." Elias shook his head. "They won't remember me. They'll remember what light is supposed to mean." He crouched down to her, level, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "This," he gestured to the core above them, "was never about power. It was about balance. The Aurelians forgot that. They thought control was perfection." "And what's perfection?" she asked softly. He smiled faintly. "Knowing when to let go." Footsteps echoed in the hall. A detachment of royal guards entered, their armor muted in color rather than radiant, a symbolic shift from dominance to humility. At their head walked Queen Asilra herself, her luminous form softened by the core's glow. She approached with the solemn grace of someone used to commanding galaxies, yet willing, for once, to lower her crown. "Navigator Voss," she said, her voice carrying both respect and regret, "the Dominion owes you more than words can offer." Elias inclined his head. "I did what was needed." "That is precisely why it matters," the Queen replied. She looked up at the balance rod, her expression distant. "The Council has ratified my orders. Human apprentices will be trained in resonance theory. Your people will have access to the archives. And your daughter," she said, turning to Lyra, "will be the first hybrid admitted to the Academy proper. Her studies will begin when she is ready." Lyra blinked in surprise, her small hand tightening around her father's sleeve. "Thank you, Your Majesty." Isilra nodded, though her gaze remained fixed on Elias. "The Dominion stands on the edge of rebirth, but we are not blind. We know the truth now, that the light we built our empire upon was not ours to begin with. You've given us the chance to earn it honestly." Elias regarded her for a long moment, then spoke quietly. "Then earn it well. I won't be here to see how you do." A flicker of confusion crossed her face. "You mean to leave?" He looked up toward the ceiling, where the faint hum of Soul's resolve echoed through the foundations of the world. "That ship has waited a long time for someone to guide it again. I don't know if I'm that person anymore, but I can't let it drift alone. Humanity left echoes across this galaxy, and maybe, just maybe, some of them are still out there waiting." The Queen studied him in silence, then bowed her head. It was a small motion, but in that single gesture, an empire's pride cracked. "Then go with honor, Elias Voss. You walk between the stars now, but the Dominion will remember who made them shine." He placed a hand over his heart in acknowledgement. When she turned to leave, The guards followed, their steps reverent as though walking through a temple. Lyra remained behind. "You're really going," she said, voice trembling. He knelt before her. "You'll stay here. You'll learn their sciences, their songs, and their stories, and you'll teach them ours. That's how we change things, one truth at a time." Tears welled in her eyes, but she nodded, understanding more than her years should have. Aloud, "I'll make them remember what you said, about balance." He smiled and kissed her forehead. "That's my girl." The sound of the star core deepened, as if the planet itself were listening. Ilias walked toward the platform at the end of the chamber, where a transport field waited. The Queen's engineers had prepared it, a direct link to Sol's resolve. As he stepped into the light, the air shimmered, and for an instant he was both there and not, his figure dissolving into starlight. The next moment he stood on the bridge of the Titan-class warship. The vast control dome stretched around him, windows opening to the black sea of space. Every console hummed to life at his presence, recognizing the navigator's genetic key. The AI's voice resonated like distant thunder. "Welcome home, Navigator Voss. Awaiting orders." Elias gazed at the stars. The Dominion's world shone below, its luminous cities flickering like embers beneath clouds of gold. He could see the scars where the lattice had cracked, and the soft shimmer of repair crews rebuilding. "Set orbit pattern Theta 9, he said. "No weapons, no displays, just observation." "Confirmed," replied the AI. The ship turned slowly, gliding along the curve of the planet, its engines whispering like breath. Elias placed a hand on the console. "Transmit one message," he said. "To all frequencies." "Message content?" He thought for a moment. "Tell them, light remembers those who keep it alive." The AI pulsed softly. "Transmission complete." He exhaled and looked toward the horizon. 1,000 stars blinked back, distant, waiting. Somewhere beyond them lay whatever remained of humanity's scattered kindred. Somewhere beyond them, maybe, was peace. On the planet below, Lyra stood at the balcony of the Academy, staring upward. The sunlight caught the reflection of Sol's resolve and scattered it across the towers. The mounted mop rod above the core gleamed like a second sun, a symbol of humility carved into the heart of arrogance. She smiled through her tears, whispering to herself, "He said they'd stop laughing." And above her, across the endless vault of space, the Titan-class warship drifted in silence, carrying one man and the echo of a people who had once been forgotten. The janitor who cleaned the light had left his mark on the stars, and as the galaxy turned beneath him, the hum of the core and the whisper of the ship merged into a single sound, a heartbeat that would never fade.